Hey guys, hope everybody's doing great. Welcome to the Business on Purpose platform. It's Scott Beebe, the founder and the head coach, and I've got a discussion that I wanted to talk about today that's really important. I'm getting a lot of questions on here in the last few weeks of small business owners, and quite honestly, that's what we spend our Facebook Live time doing, is taking real life questions from heroic small business owners just like you, and really walking through those systematically. And so I thought I'd lay down this really tough question about a really tough issue, and that is, how do I have a tough conversation with somebody who's on my team? It might be a business partner, it might be a coworker, a contract employee, whatever it might look like, or a customer. We've had some of these. Actually, in the last few weeks, we've had a few strings of these where small business owners have really been struggling with a few customers. And so I thought I'd lay out a couple of things that might be helpful for you when thinking about. So let's pull up some slides here. Number one, when we look to have a tough conversation with somebody, the first question we really do need to consider asking is, how much is it costing me not to have the tough conversation with somebody? What is that costing us on the back end? And you really got to think about this, because everything has a cost, an associated cost with it. And if it's costing you either in productivity, if it's costing you relational capital, in emotional capital, whatever it might be, you've got to start by asking yourself the question, how much is it costing me not to have this conversation? I'm not just talking about dollars. I'm talking about everything related with the conversation and with the relationship that you're in the middle of, and the reason that you won't have that tough conversation. So it's really important to think about that. So let's talk about some strategies. Number one, regardless of wherever you're at in your faith background, spiritual background, and that sort of thing, the one thing that we talk about a lot is the need to sit down quietly and just ask for wisdom. There's a great passage, I believe it's in the letter written by James in the New Testament of the Bible, and it said, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to everyone and doesn't beat you up about it. And so it's a really safe place to go to get some wisdom. And quite honestly, if you're about to have a tough conversation in your business, at home, with a customer, that is where I would start. It's where we recommend we start. Some of you might skip this step. I would advise you not to skip this step because wisdom has to be a foundational priority for you when it comes to having a really tough conversation. So that's number one. Number two is to create a framework, literally to create a framework. Write it out. Heard a great quote by Michael Gerber. He said, if you don't write it down, you don't own it. So think about the double meaning of that. If you don't write it down, you don't own it. Legally, it's not really yours. And if you don't write it down, you don't own it. Like, there's no ownership behind that. And so I wanted to give you an example of what a framework might look like. Here's a five-part coaching framework that we actually recommend a lot. And the first question is, when you sit down to have the tough conversation, hey, tell me what's the biggest roadblock that you have? And so what this does is it sets a tone for you to kind of create this dialogue mentality, instead of I'm coming to you just to tell you a bunch of facts and maybe even to kind of beat you up and to make you cry and all of that. No, we don't want to do that. We want to ask first, what's the biggest roadblock that you're experiencing right now? And get them to talk, because you want to bring them into the dialogue. It's such a priority to be able to do that. The second is, when we look at it, is how can I help you remove that roadblock? So you want to offer your support to them. What does that look like for you to offer your support to them? So to sit down and say, hey, what's the biggest thing, what's the biggest roadblock, biggest headache you're experiencing right now? And then how can I help remove that roadblock from you? So you may not be able to, but at least you offer and extend that to them to be able to create solidarity and some sort of unity in the conversation, and which is about to go really tough. And so establish that groundwork and be sincere. Don't just do it to get to the next phase of it. Be sincere. Third thing is to use this phrase. Now, I highlighted this phrase because I really want you to use this phrase. I don't want you to use any other phrase. Here's what I see. That's different than this is how I feel. This is, you're a blank or whatever, because that brings in emotion. And we want this to be a relatively emotionless conversation, not to strip it of its humanity at all, but instead, so with sobriety, you can sit down and just have a conversation about things. So if I were to tell you, let's say you were wearing a blue shirt, and I were to say, hey, you're wearing a blue shirt. Well, that's a fact. It's just kind of a statement, and it doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. There's no emotion in on that. But if I told you instead, I don't like your blue shirt, now all of a sudden your fist might go up, and it's a little bit of a boxing match at that point. And so by using that phrase, here's what I see, such a powerful phrase. The fourth part of the framework is to check in. Hey, does that make sense to you? Here's what I see. What I see is you've really, really been struggling lately to get not only accuracy in your work, but also timeliness in your work. Does that make sense to you? And now you've opened yourself up for them to come in and be able to provide you with some dialogue there. Now, you may disagree with their dialogue, but you don't have to sit there and say, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Don't do that, all right? Just listen. Just listen. And it's really hard. Again, these are tough conversations. Now, the fifth element of the framework is to say, now here's what I need you to do. You've earned that right by then because you've checked in with them. You've had a discussion about what their biggest roadblock is. You've asked how you can help them remove that roadblock for them right now. You've also talked to them about unemotionally what you see, asking them once you checked in, does that make sense? And then you come back and say, hey, here's what I really need you to do right now. Really, really important thing that I need you to do. So let's go to the third part of what we're talking about, and that is write it down. Going back to that quote I just mentioned, in fact, that was God's wisdom to Habakkuk. Write the vision down so that those who read it may run. And then that Gerber quote, if you don't write it down, you don't own it. I want you to take a notepad of paper, just like this, notepad of paper. I want you to take it and I want you to write the framework down. And when you go to have the tough conversation, I want you to take that framework with you because it's really, really powerful when somebody else sees that you've done your homework. You've thought about this. You're not just rushing in emotionally where so many of us, so many heroic small business owners get in the habit of just, I'm going to take care of this now, and you rush in and you start to have that conversation without really, really thinking it through. So write it down. Write it down. And then this next one is go straight after the problem, but do it with discretion. All right? What do I mean by that? Don't beat around the bush. Don't start to kind of go, well, and then please don't do this. Hey, you've been doing great work. It's been really awesome to have you. You're nothing but awesomeness around here, and you start building them up, and then when you tear them down, guess what happened? They forgot about everything that you just said. And so go straight into it. And what you can say is, here's what I see. Now, here's what I need you to do. And I'm going to be honest with you. It's really been a struggle for me lately, and I want to talk to you about this because I want you to improve. Or if it's another struggle about, hey, I want to leave, and you have this conversation, then tell them right up front, once you get to that part of the framework, to say, I want to let you know I'm going to be leaving, and now I want to tell you why. All right? So tell them up front. I'll never forget that I told that to a boss of mine one time years and years and years ago, and it was such a relief just to say, I want to let you know that I'm leaving, now I want to tell you why. And so then we could kind of create the shock right up front so it's quick. It's like pulling a Band-Aid off, and then you can go into the conversation. So make sure you go straight into the problem, but do it with discretion. Hey, I want to let you know I'm going to be leaving, and I want to tell you why in just a minute, but I wanted to tell you that up front. Or I want to let you know I'm really looking for improvement in your work, but I want to tell you why in just a minute. So go straight after the problem. Number 5, a reminder, stick with the vision, mission, values. Everything should tie back to your vision, your mission, and your values. Every decision that you make, if you have to terminate somebody, it should tie directly into your values. Your performance is no longer aligned with our core values. So a statement like that can be used. If you're having struggle with work product, you can come back and say, hey, your work product right now is not lining up with our core values, and I want to figure out how we make that better. And so you start to, but make sure you align it with the core values. Why? Is because core values make things unemotional. It's just like what we were talking about a minute ago. We're trying to keep the emotion out of it. And when you can leverage the vision, the mission, and the values, you can begin to really take that stuff out of it. All right? So the sixth thing that I want to show you is to create an actionable solution based on the vision, mission, and the values. So let's go back to the framework that I showed you. Hey, what's the biggest roadblock that you're facing right now? How can I help you remove that? Here's what I see. I want to tell you what I see. What I see is your work performance is not holding up in line with our core values. You go straight after it. Does that make sense to you? You're checking in, and then here's what I need you to do. And the whole time you're keeping in mind your core values. Now from here, here's what I need you to do, that's where you create the actionable solution. Here's what I need you to do. And make it actionable, it's something that they can do, but also make it measurable so they can follow, the old SMART goal thing, but you can follow up. Now, if you're any student of the Business on Purpose platform, you know where I'm going with this. Your team meeting structure. This needs to be embedded into your team meeting structure so it can be tracked and followed and encouraged and motivated and trained for with this actionable solution. All right? So those are 6 things that you can do right now That's the framework that I was talking to you about. What's the biggest roadblock? How can I help you remove that? Here's what I see. Does that make sense to you? And here's what I need you to do. So I hope that helps you. Hey, I do want to let you know every time if you go to our website at mybusinessonpurpose.com/guide, GUIDE, /guide, we've got a guide there for heroic small business owners to figure out, am I working in my business or am I working on my business? And it's a metric, one-page PDF that you can just walk down, and with numbers, you can literally look at and go, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. And if we can help you in any way, let us know. We're always looking to help liberate small business owners from the chaos of working in their business. Leah, I'm glad you could join us. No, it was not specifically for you, but now that you mention it, yes, it is for you. So well done. Now go take action. Go take action on this. You guys have a great day. Thanks for joining me right here on the Business on Purpose platform.